Come. Sio Nagadama. Iowa, Wade, Galisker, Chalakant, Dawadon. Ryan Mackey, Yone Gunte, Dawadon. My name is Ryan Mackey or Wade. It's good to be with everybody this afternoon. One of the things that I've had the privilege of doing over the last decade is to talk about some of our traditional Cherokee community values. I hope a lot of people have seen the PDF. I don't know if everybody has, but I hope you have. We kind of have a copy behind me, but the words are awfully small. So we've shared this far and wide. I've worked for Cherokee Nation for over 15 years. And in my previous capacity, I was able to go out into the at-large communities and visit with folks about some of our traditional teachings, songs, stories, and of course these community values as well. We were able to distribute posters and PDFs. So if anybody wants a PDF of this, they can contact the folks at Cherokee Nation's Community and Cultural Outreach. You can also contact me if you know me on Facebook, or my email at work is Ryan Mackey, RYAN-MACKEY at Cherokee.org, and I can send you a PDF as well. As I've gone around and talked about some of these teachings, a lot of times I don't provide the context where these things have come from. So these words are Cherokee words that they've been passed down from one generation to the next. And I didn't have a lot of Cherokee speakers in my family growing up, and by the time I was old enough to really understand the value of our language, most of the speakers in my family had already crossed over. So I went to other people's grandparents, visited with them, and I learned a lot. One of the elder gentlemen that I received some of these community teachings from was a gentleman named Boss Cummings Jagesa. He's one of my mom's cousins. He grew up and he lived in Rocky Ford, Oaks, most of his life. He was a ceremonial chief for the Rocky Ford Oaks Community Ground. Now, Bossy, he was a funny man. He had a lot of good things to say about people, spoke well about everybody. When people got to visit with him, they always walked away feeling uplifted and feeling good. Sometimes people, saw him as a figure, that just went around and spread cheer. And he didn't always stand up in front of people and talk about these community values, but he showed those community values. And when I talked to him about what it meant to him to grow up as a Cherokee person, as a traditional Cherokee person, he talked about these community values. Ed Fields, as many of you might know, is one of our Cherokee language teachers. He's a national treasure. He teaches Cherokee online, and I hope that if you haven't taken any of his classes, you take the opportunity to do so. And he speaks about several of these community values as well. But the person that gave me the most information about them is an elder named Benny Smith Jagesa. He passed away just right before the pandemic started. And he sat me down one day and he lined these things out. And as time went by, he did presentations to some of our local communities and some of our local educational organizations and went into detail about these community values. Now, my introduction was when I was driving him around. It was my job to take care of him, make sure he got to his speaking events on time. And I think that looking back on it, I didn't realize what a treasure it was just to have him with me. I knew how special he was to some degree, but sometimes it takes years to even understand some of the teachings that he was providing to me at those times. I still will reflect upon some of our conversations, and I'll realize some of the deeper meaning of the words and ideas that he presented to me. One time I asked him, I said, Benny, what do we need to do as Cherokees? Some of us, don't live around here. Some of us grew up outside the reservation or outside the state. Even some of the people that grew up around here, they don't have close contact with all of these traditions. And he grew up at the ceremonial grounds. His daddy was a ceremonial chief. His older brother was a ceremonial chief. He himself was a Cherokee medicine man, and his siblings were all medicine people. So he was deeply, deeply grounded in our traditions. But most of us Cherokees, we don't have that privilege. I didn't put it to him quite like that. I said, what do we need to know? What do we need to know to help us understand how to be good Cherokees? And he said, I think you need to focus on the humanness. The humanness is what you have to think about. And I didn't understand what he was saying at all. Everybody's human, right? I mean, if you're listening to me speak, you're human. We have humans all over the world. What's the thing about being human that's supposed to make us a good Cherokee? Ayan is our word for person. Ayanwia, a human being. Oniyanwia are Indians. So this word Oniyanwia for Indians has an extra sound at the end than just the word for person does. And this extra sound can be interpreted various ways. We could use it to mean principal people. We could use it to mean most numerous people. We could use it to mean real people or complete people. There are different ways to interpret that word. But what he was explaining to me as the day went by is how we have to treat each other. It doesn't matter whether we're Native Americans, Indians, African Americans, Asian Americans. It doesn't matter what part of the world we live in or where we're from. We do share this humanness. And as Cherokee people, we have been given teachings that tell us how to treat one another no matter where folks are from or who folks are. And as he taught me about some of these teachings, I realized these are very difficult to follow. Oftentimes, when you try to follow these teachings, you feel like you're giving something up. It's kind of like folks that read the gospel, and they're told to turn the other cheek. They're told to love their neighbor. They're told to not seek vengeance and not to have anger in their hearts. Those are pretty tall orders. And our community values, they share that same level of exactitude when it comes to how to treat one another. These expectations are difficult to maintain. So I thought to myself, well, these traditional teachings, these community values, they were in the context of our ancestors and how they lived in their villages. So we should probably just apply them to Cherokees. We should treat Cherokees with these extra careful, loving ways. Because maybe they will treat us the same way. If I treat you this way and you treat me this way, we have an understanding as Cherokee people that this is the way that we should act. This is the way we should treat one another. However, the idea of these things being human values as opposed to just Cherokee values was his core point. When Benny told me we need to be more human, he meant that these teachings don't just apply to other Cherokees, they apply to everybody. It's not up to us to push our teachings on other people. It's up to us to live our teachings in a way to where other people learn about who we are by the way that we act, the way that we behave, and the way that we treat one another. So the way that we teach is not necessarily by preaching, but by doing. And if another person doesn't follow these values, it's still incumbent upon us to be who we are. We can't control how other people act and how other people behave. We can only control what we do, how we act and how we behave. And our ancestors have passed these teachings down to us through the generations. There are 4 of them that are my favorite, and I'm going to stand up because sometimes it's easier for me to think when I'm walking around, so I kind of pace a little bit. So there are these 4 teachings or community values that were given to me after I asked about this idea of love. I knew that in Greek there were a lot of different words for love. And so I'm not a Greek scholar at all, but I understood that even though ideas like love and respect and compassion, honor, kindness, those ideas, they seem to be universal. Almost everybody all across the world, they value these things. No matter what cultural background you're from or what religious background you're from, there are these values that transcend our differences. The challenge is that different cultures have different ways of expressing these values. Take respect for an example. When I was younger, I used to help our Healing to Wellness Court. And we had a wonderful judge that was kind of in charge of the process, but he was a Cherokee person. But the but is that he grew up and became a professional person, got his Juris Doctorate, became a judge. He lived in the non-Indian world most of the time, and what he had learned to demonstrate his respect is a firm handshake, looking somebody in the eyes. But the folks in our court were young Cherokees from our rural areas. And these young Cherokees grew up in our communities, and although they were young enough to where they didn't speak Cherokee, their parents probably did, and their grandparents definitely did. And so they grew up in a very Cherokee household, and they were taught respect is not staring someone in the eye, not giving them a firm handshake. So for them, when somebody stares them in the eye and grabs their hand and squeezes it really tight, that wasn't a sign of respect, it was a challenge. And so when they came through to shake his hand, he would demand that they do that, look him in the eye and give him a firm handshake. But to them, they couldn't overcome their teachings, the way that they grew up. They were in a stressful situation. They were having to shake hands with this judge. He had a lot of power and a lot of authority. And so they might tell themselves, look him in the eye, give him a firm handshake. But that's not who they were. And he would get on to them. And he would say, show me the respect that I deserve. And he asked me one day, he said, why is this happening? Why won't they look me in the eye? Why won't they give me a firm handshake? And I said, they don't want to challenge you. They can't help but show you respect by keeping their eyes down and not giving you a hard, firm handshake. So there are these ideas of love that are all over the world. I know the Greeks, like I said, they have several different words for several different words for the idea of love that we have in English. And I noticed that, you know, when I would talk to my relatives in Cherokee, they didn't say, I love you in Cherokee. I never heard that word. And so that caused me to reflect on this idea of love. And I realized that a lot of these older Cherokees in my family, they didn't even say I love you in English either. It was understood. I would hug them and I would tell them I love them, and they would just kind of say, you know, like yes, or maybe they wouldn't even reply to me. And so I learned how to say it in Cherokee. I learned how to say "ga-gay-you." And when I would say that to them, I got the same response. Just no real reply. And I paid attention to other Cherokee speakers and their conversations, how they showed expressions of love and affection for the family members, and they didn't say it all the time. Sometimes you would hear them say it in English, and it was really clear that they weren't really comfortable with this phrase. So that was one of the things that I asked Benny about. I said, what about love in Cherokee? And he gave me 4 words for love. And these 4 words are on that document that's been passed out all over the United States, in that community values document. And the first one that he talked about was Daidza-dal-gay-you sayesti. Now, Daidza-dal-gay-you sayesti is one word in Cherokee, but Cherokee is really interesting in that one Cherokee word is easily equal to an entire sentence in English, sometimes more like an entire paragraph. So the Daidza-dal in the front means y'all to each other, and the sayesti at the end means do it from now on. But the middle part, that gay you, in dates da gay you sesti, that gay you part in the middle, I noticed that that was in the same word for I love you, ga gay you. And I asked him about that, and he said it doesn't really mean the same thing. And I got to thinking about what does love mean? When I speak English, which I do most of the time, I'm a second language Cherokee learner, so, I don't talk Cherokee all day. I work for our language department, so I get an opportunity to speak Cherokee a lot, but it's not my first language, and I think better in English, and I speak better English than I do Cherokee. But I recognize that these two words, they shared that same root. And I also recognize that the English word love is pretty weak, to be honest with you. If you listen to people use this word, they say things like, I love my dog, I love pizza, I love going to town on Friday night, I love my mom, I love my spouse, I love my children, and it's all different kinds of love, right? It doesn't mean the same thing. It's really contextual, context specific. And the kind of love that you have for your children is hopefully not the kind of love that you have for pizza. So in Cherokee, you can't use this gagayu outside of interacting with a human being. These 4 words that he gave me for love are all tied to human communication. We have some words in Cherokee that are used for everything and some words that are just used between humans. So when you say "Dagagayu sesti," it does mean you all love each other from here on out. But what it really means is you should be stingy with each other. But not in the jealous, hateful, selfish, stingy way that we think of as stingy. Because, obviously this is not something that our elders would support. But it's a stinginess for somebody's well-being. Like you're stingy for their welfare. You don't want them used up. You don't want them abused. You don't want them hurt in any way. Every person only has so many heartbeats in their life. Every person is only going to take so many breaths. And so a person's spirit may be infinite and indestructible, but our bodies, they only last a short while in the greater scheme of things. And if you really care about somebody, you're going to protect that person. You're going to care for them in a way where you don't want them to be used up. He compared this to a mother's relationship with her child. You don't just hand that baby off to anybody. You're really selective about who gets to handle your baby and how they treat your baby. People become very protective of their children. And that's the kind of love that this Deidzadageyu Sesti is talking about. Another one of our teachings is Deidzadalawo Deesti. You hear that Deidzada at the front and the Deesti at the end, it's the same. Deidzadalawo Deesti, it kind of sounds like Deidzadageyu Sesti, but the middle part is different. That lawo and the middle is specific to the meaning of this word. And it's related to the word like. So in Cherokee, if I like pizza, I say pizza agilukti. If I like diamonds, I say diamonds agilukti. I mean, you put this word agilukti in a sentence in Cherokee, you're talking about objects. You're not talking about humans. When you talk about humans, you have to say jilawod. Jilawod. Now, in the syllabary, in the Cherokee language, it's spelled using the same characters, but the way we pronounce it changes its meaning from talking about an object to talking about a human. So when you say Deidzadalawo Deesti, it means like one another. Y'all be doing this from now on, like each other. But like is a weak idea in English. If love is a weak idea in English, like is even weaker. So this idea of like in Cherokee is related to the word for honored. To honor somebody, they say ajilawod. And you hear that lawod right in the middle of that word, and that's that same as in the center of the word Deidzadalawo Deesti. It means to hold one another in high regard. It seems to be related to the word galanlad, up above, galanlad di'lan. Something that's up above. So when you say Deidzadalawo Deesti, it means hold one another in high regard in a way where you look for things to like about one another, to admire about each other. Everybody always makes a joke about, somebody has a face that only their mother could love. But this teaching is talking about we need to find something to love in one another. to hold in high regard. So this is one of those love words. Another word that's very similar is uskedi dejadayela sesti. Uskedi is our word for sacred, but it's a kind of sacred that anything has, or everything has. All these plants, you go out into the woods, every one of these plants, they're medicine. They have something about that plant that can help you make your life better. They say that everything in this world, how we think, how we speak, how we act towards each other, that's medicine. It's not just the pills you take, it's a philosophy, it's your actions, it's your behavior, it's your values. So everything has this potential to be sacred. Different bird feathers are sacred because they're used for different things. Even something like a mourning dove feather, it has a spiritual purpose, but it's not the same as an eagle feather. It has its own purpose, but it's not necessarily the same. That word that I spoke about before, galawad, when I was saying ajilawad, somebody that was honored with that word, dejadalawad desti, like one another. That word galawadi, that means sacred also. So we have ulsked, which is sacred. We have galawad, which is sacred. Where ulsked is that everything has this sacred potential, galawad means that it's of an elevated purpose, an elevated status. It has a context that means that it's the right tool for the job. So although we may have our own individual sacredness, there are certain times where certain feathers are considered more sacred than others. If you're going to war, if you're going out around the fire to sing and dance, that eagle feather is the one that you want to wear. You don't want to wear a turtle dove feather, you want to wear an eagle feather. You don't want to wear a pigeon feather. So for that context, that idea of sacredness is very specific. There's almost a little bit of a hierarchy to it. But this word ulskedi, it has to do with having gravity. It has weight. It has its own value, its own importance, its own weight. And if something's physically heavy and I try to lift it, I can say, gawged, that's heavy. Gawged means it's heavy. And we're talking about something that can be measured when we say gawged. But when we take the other version of that word, ulsked, it's something that you shouldn't measure. In Cherokee, we have some descriptions that talk about qualities and others that talk about quantities, and we keep them separate. In the Western world, we can break anything down into numbers, so we can sell it. But in the Cherokee world, some things should not be broken down into quantities. These are qualities, and they should be maintained because they have their own inherent value. And that word ulsked is talking about its own inherent weight or its own inherent quality and value. So when you say ulsked dejadalyela sesti, that word that follows, dejadalyela sesti, is referencing this weight, this value that each and every one of us has, this potential for sacredness. Dejadalyela sesti has that dejadan front and that sesti at the end, like those other words I spoke about, but the middle of dejadalyela sesti, that yela, is really similar to our word for body. Like my body is agi yela, your body is jayela. Uyela is her body or his body, but our bodies are not who we are. They are an image of who we are. So this verb, dejadalyela sesti, means liken yourself or have that image to each other of one another. So when you put the words together, ulskedi dejadalyela sesti, it means liken that image that you have for one another, that which is sacred, that which is unique or valuable. So you can see how it's hard to translate Cherokee, right? These words are not simple, they're complicated. So when we translate this phrase, we translate it to mean treat everyone as sacred, but it means more than that. It means find that which is unique to each individual. Search it, seek it out, find it, elevate that, recognize it, learn from it, and make yourself better by it. Like they say, steel sharpens steel. We're supposed to look for these things in one another. Take the time to find these things of value that we have together, and we make ourselves better. So that's another word that he gave me for love. And the fourth one was kind of funny because at first I thought he was saying, go out yonder and fight. I grew up at my grandma's house a lot of the time, and she'd come in there and she'd say, go out yonder if you're going to wrestle. That's what she'd say. I didn't know where yonder was, but once I figured that out, I was like, I don't want to go out in the road and fight with my cousins. This is not what I want to do. And so when I heard this word, Dejadatlia Sayesti, that's what it sounded like to me. Go out yonder and wrestle. Dejadatlia Sayesti means to go and fight with each other from here on out. But he said, no, you're not hearing it right. It has a different song to it. It's Dejadatlia Sayesti, it has a bounce in the middle. It goes up in tone. Dejadatlia Sayesti, it means grapple. It means hold on to each other and don't let go no matter what. If you care about somebody, you're not going to throw them away. You're not going to put them down. You're not going to let anything come between you and them. You're going to hold on to one another so tight that you never let go no matter what. It's kind of like wrestling, I guess. But the tone of it makes it a different idea than just somebody out there punching around on their cousins. So the idea is that if you care about somebody, you will find no reason to let go of them. You'll hold on to them no matter what they do, no matter what they say, no matter how they act. Even if it's just in your heart, you hold on to them until the day that you can make that relationship right again. I'll have to be the first to admit this flies in the face of modern pop psychology, which talks about throwing toxic people out of your life. I'm not saying that if somebody's abusive to you, cruel to you, constantly mistreats you, I'm not saying you should subject yourself to that sort of abuse. That's not what this is about. This is about for those people that you have found value in, that you make sure that there's an open path between you and them. So these teachings, there's a bunch of them. Those are just 4 of them in that list, but I think there's probably about 15 or 16 on that list, and we've identified about 40 total. And I don't think that there's any limit to these numbers of teachings. Some of my most favorites are Dijaligohi Jehesti, which means Dijaligohi means to unite together, team up, and live that way. So go about doing things as a team, which is related to one of our teachings that you hear all the time, Gadugi. Now if you say Gadugi, it means you just came out of the water. But if you say Gadugi, that's that idea of working together. So when you say Dijaligo Hesti, Ij Hesti, it means work together as a team. That's what that idea of Gadugi means. That when somebody is sick, our ancestors didn't just send good thoughts and prayers. They didn't just go on social media and say, I hope you get better. What they did is they organized something called a Gadugi, which was an organization. It wasn't just a feeling. It was an activity. The men would get together and they would gather the women together and they would go to that sick person's house. The women would help inside the house. They might help cook. They might help clean. They might help take care of the sick person. The men would do the same. They would go outside the house. They would fix the roof or the porch. They would chop wood. They would take care of that family. They would bring food. They would team up and they would converge on that household and they would make sure that that family was taken care of. That was what Gadugi meant. It didn't mean I'm paying you money so you better act right. It meant we take our own time to go and we take care of each other. So one of the things when we were in a training, we were talking for this Healing to Wellness Court, and one of my friends asked Benny Smith, what if we keep giving and giving and giving to this one kid, and he keeps taking, but he doesn't do anything with it. He just keeps taking and taking and taking. She said, these teachings, are we just supposed to keep doing it? When do we get to stop? And he said, I'm not going to answer your question because only you can answer that question. But what you just told me is your well runs dry. So you do have to take care of your own strength. You do have to take care of yourself before you can hurt other people or help other people. Otherwise, you're hurting yourself, and you can't be there to help when people are hurting. You do have to take care of yourself. But the idea of setting 1 mark, 2 marks, 3 marks, keeping score against people is not our way. We didn't keep score. One time we had an elders meeting and all these elders gathered together. They'd been researching different types of economies, different types of governments, because we were trying to understand our traditional way of doing things. And they wanted to study communism, they wanted to study socialism and fascism and capitalism, and try to understand these ideas from a Cherokee perspective so we could articulate our own teachings. And after we did this for a few weeks, they said, let's put it up. So they put it up on the board, and we wrote it in Cherokee, and then we translated it to English, and it said, when somebody asks you for something, you give it without any expectation of return. When somebody asks you for something, you give it without any expectation of return. We gave freely of our time and our resources without any expectation of return. So that means that the person giving does not keep a ledger. They don't count what they've given out. But you know who's supposed to? It's the person that's asking. If I ask you for help, it's important for me to remember that I asked you for help, and it's important for me to remember to give you something in return. But if somebody asks me for help, I don't remember whether they give me something in return or not. That was our old economy. That was our old system. So if people came and asked us for land, you know what we did? We said, go ahead and stay here if that's what you need to do. You can see how this could be taken advantage of. So when Benny was telling me about these teachings, I said, surely we can't apply these to the world. And he said, you have to use some critical thinking skills. You have to be aware of what you're giving up. But if you make a choice to give something to somebody, you've given it to them. It's theirs. They don't owe you. It's a gift. So if you have the strength to give of your time and your resources, if you're strong enough to do that, then it's not fair to expect anything in return. And if you don't have that to give, then don't offer it. That's just one of our teachings. At one time, elders, they were careful about offering their help. A lot of times, they taught us to wait until we were asked. I wondered why that was, but I got to know a family, and in this family, this young man was recently married with his wife, and his father-in-law came over. And he said, why haven't you fixed up the stove? Why haven't you fixed up the toilet stool? Why haven't you fixed up the sliding glass door? And that young man said, I haven't been here long enough. And the dad didn't understand because he wasn't Cherokee. But that young wife appreciated when that older man, when her father-in-law came to stay, he did fix the stove. He did fix the sliding glass door. He did fix the running toilet. But as he fixed these things, she became more and more ashamed, and she went to her bedroom, and that's where she stayed. And that older man asked his son, why did she run away? Why did she hide from us? And he said, you embarrassed her. What you told her is that her things aren't good enough for you. She understands that you did it with love, but in her heart, she didn't feel it. She didn't feel love, she felt judged. So the idea of stepping forward and giving somebody advice or help that they haven't asked for steps on people's toes. So in a lot of our native communities, they're used to people coming in and trying to save them, trying to fix things, trying to do things without respect for how things are. And in our Cherokee world, you don't give advice, you don't provide help unless it's requested. And that's difficult. Now, you see a baby crawling into the fire, you don't wait for the baby to ask for help. You save the baby. But when it comes to adults that get to make their own decisions, that have their own lives, you respect their agency. And you let them come and ask you for help. It also keeps you from running around and helping everybody and wearing yourself out, wearing yourself thin. Because one of the things I've learned is that if you keep helping people without them asking you for help, sometimes they start to resent you. Sometimes if you keep helping people and they haven't asked for your help, they're doing you a favor by letting you help them. If they haven't asked you for help, they don't want your help, and you're helping them, you're imposing something on them. They're giving you a favor by letting you help. And at some point, they might resent you. They might feel like you've used all this help to hold it over their head. So it doesn't seem normal from a Western or mainstream perspective, but from a Cherokee perspective, these values, they have a context. One of our teachings tells us, "Na ni yo, deja hloya sti skesti." Na ni yo, it means everywhere there are people. Deja da hloya sti skesti means integrate them, join them in, make them a part of you, make them as one with you, the same as you. Include them in everything. So sometimes we don't like what people are doing. Sometimes their life is not the way that we would live our lives or the way that we were taught was right. But this teaching says that when these people come to be with you, to participate in your life with you, when they come to your homes, when they come to your communities, when they come to eat with you, you include them. Just because they're humans, not because they've earned it. They don't have to earn anything. They are inherently worthy of your time, respect, and inclusion, just because they're human. Obviously, they can't run around knocking over tables and kicking people, but if they're willing to act right, we should make them a part of us and include them whenever possible. That's one of our old teachings. So when outsiders would move into our communities, we would bring them in. If they wanted to learn to talk Cherokee and live as Cherokees and be Cherokee, that's what they were. That's how come we brought in all those fur traders way back when, and how come some of us have last names. Some of our, full-blood communities, they have folks in these towns that have non-Cherokee last names, and sometimes they just adopted that last name, but sometimes way back, way back in the closet, they had an ancestor that came over. They just brought them in. They might have been from Scotland or England or France or somewhere else. They just brought them in and made them Cherokee. That's just what our people did. We included one another. We took care of each other. There are some of these things that are on this sheet that I've talked about today, but there are also some things that are important that were never on that PDF. This time of year is around the time that we would bring in our fall harvest. When the corn was hard on the corn stalks. We would have already had our green corn ceremony when the corn was first fit to eat. Roasting ears time. Today, we eat sweet corn, but field corn is also pretty good when you get it when it's soft. You can cook it, roast it, and it's sweet. And that's what our ancestors did. We would go through this green corn ceremony. We would purify ourselves. We would eat corn together as a community. We would dance, and we would feast, and we would give thanks together. But this time of the year, as the corn dried up and was hard on the stalks, we harvested the rest of it, and we used it for the rest of the year. This is the time of the year where we would have to prune ourselves. When the temperature starts to drop and the leaves, they start to change colors, and then they start to fall, the plants die, they lay over, everything goes dormant. They say that our ancestors looked around at the world and they learned how to be by watching how the world worked. We learned the way to live by watching how the plants lived, by how the animals lived, and also we watched one another. If we saw that certain behavior had good consequences, that meant that that was probably something that we should do. So we learned from our environment. That's what we did. And when those trees let go of those leaves in the fall, they pruned themselves. They got rid of the old, so by spring, they could make way for the new. So as fall approaches, it was the time to Dejada no galawo skesti. Dejada no galawo skesti means to periodically prune yourselves up. Yudaha Dejada no galawo skesti. Just like those trees, you have to take this time. This time of year, our ancestors would meet in council, and they would discuss what things they should do differently, what things they should do new, what things they should put away. They would take away the old ceremonial pots and objects that they used for their dances and their feasts, and they would bust them up so that they would make new ones. They got rid of the old. They took the brush off of their arbors and off of their houses, and they replaced it with fresh things because we had to renew ourselves, constantly renew ourselves. And to do that, you have to get rid of the old things. You have to prune yourself up. You have to go through your things and get rid of the things that you don't need. Look at your life. Look at your habits. Look at the things that you do and get rid of the things you don't need. Look at the objects that you've collected. Get rid of the things that you don't need. You give them to people that need them. That's what they did. We didn't used to have inheritance. When someone would pass away, their kids didn't fight over what was left. They didn't have the firstborn son inherited everything. They didn't have wills. They didn't have that. So what they did is they knew when it was about time for them to go, they would give these things away to people in their community or in their family. And if they passed away before they got rid of it, their family had to finish giving those things away. It was a different way of looking at things. We gave things away. So when you prune yourselves up, look for people in your life that you can give things to and give them those things that they need. And this leaves you the opportunity for means renew yourselves. Ije is the word in the middle of that. And Ije means new. The word for green is Ije, which means it's like new. Green grass is new grass. Green trees have new leaves. Ije is our word for new. So when you say it means to renew yourselves. In the fall, it was our ceremonial new year. Our ancestors say that that was when the world was renewed. They also say that that was when the world was first created. It was created in the fall. So the fall was our spiritual new year, but everything was green and grew new in the spring, and that's our physical new year. So that's when our ancestors would build. Throughout the fall, they made plans. They got rid of the old. Over the winter, they told stories about their vision of what the future would be. And come springtime, they built new things. So not only do you need to periodically prune yourself, you also have to go and renew yourself. Seek out these new things that give you life and give you joy. These are some of the teachings that didn't make it to the PDF, but they're still really valuable teachings. So, when I was a young person, I heard some Cherokee, but I didn't understand it. My parents didn't speak Cherokee. I just heard it, a lot of times when the older generation would come to visit my grandma and grandpa. They would come and they would stay and they would talk a lot of Cherokee. So I didn't grow up with these words. But as I learned these words, I realized that I grew up with these teachings. So our language is a great vehicle for our culture. It directly transmits our ideas. It directly transmits our ideas, our thoughts, and our philosophy. All those things that we hold to value. Our language is a great transmission for those things. But when the language fades in your family and isn't passed on, those ideas may not be spoken about. Sometimes they're translated to English, but sometimes they're not spoken about at all. But the teachings still live. And you'll look around and you'll see people in your own families and in your own communities that still live these teachings even if they don't know the words for them. They just don't even know why they do it. They just know it's the right way to do things because they learn by doing. They learn by watching. In Cherokee, the word teach me is squayohaga. Squayohaga means to teach me something. You teach this to me. But I don't really know what teach means in English. But squayohaga in Cherokee means show me. Show me. So a long time ago, they didn't set their children down and say, this is the Cherokee way to make fry bread. This is the Cherokee way to shuck corn. This is the Cherokee way to go gather wild onions. They said, come with me, let's do these things. This is the way my grandma did it. This is the way my mom did it. We learned by doing. So I feel that our language is very valuable, very important. Sacred. And we need it to be able to pass these values on. But we shouldn't overlook that in some of our families that have lost the language, these values are still being lived. It's nice to give name to these values, to acknowledge these values as ours, and to support each other, and to be proud of the teachings that our ancestors provided. But they say the very these very teachings were given to us by Unehlana. Unehlana is our provider, the one that gave all, the provider of all things. It's just the Cherokee word for God. Unehlana is in the Cherokee Bible. You hear it when folks sing it in Cherokee hymns at church, but it's the word that we use for God from time immemorial. And we were told that Unehlana is the one that gave us these teachings. These teachings were by word of mouth, given to us from God's lips to our ears. They say that at one time when we were first created from the dirt itself, God stirred saliva into that dirt and blew breath into the life of those first humans. That the humans had these teachings inside of them then. It was inherently a part of them. But as they struggled and separated themselves and moved all across the world, some of these teachings were lost. Their echoes faded. But that these teachings are not just our teachings, but the teachings of the entire world. It's just some people have forgotten them. We believe that we were able to hang on to them because of our language. And we've learned that even though families that don't have the language, they still have some of these teachings. Each generation removed from the language makes the teachings weaker and weaker. At one time, everybody in the world depended on each other to survive. All across Europe, Asia, Africa, all these different societies depended on each other. No one person could survive. You had to have help with farming and hunting and building and doing anything. You had to work together. People relied upon their villages. They relied upon their extended families. And that's how everybody was. Over the last 60 years, 100 years in the United States, things have changed focus from community to family. And I would say a long time ago, families had to rely on each other to get by, but not too long ago, we were told that each family should be able to take care of their own. And now we're being told that each individual needs to take care of themselves. It's nice for an individual to take care of themselves. But you see kids that have moved all across the United States. They don't see their parents. They don't see their grandparents. That's not how the world used to be, and that's not how Cherokees used to be. And in our communities, that's not how Cherokees are. We still rely on one another. So if independence is the goal of the Western world, and it's held so high up in value, I talked to our old folks and I said, is that what we should be moving towards? Is that what I should be teaching my kid? To be an island, to be able to take care of himself without regard to anybody else? And they said, yeah, that's what you teach them when they're a teenager. That's the first thing that they learn. They need to know how to take care of themselves first. But they're not really an adult until they can look outside of themselves and take care of their family. He's not really going to be a true man until he can not just look out for his family, but look outside of himself and take care of his community. Independence is first. And if that's what the rest of the world is telling us to aim to, we're going to have a bunch of teenagers running around. If adulthood is not about taking responsibility just for yourself, but for your family and your community, then we can't stop at individuals. That's why these community values are important. If we maintain the way to treat one another and take care of each other, we are always going to be here. We will always exist, we will always survive, and we will always be Cherokee. The biggest challenge I see to this way of life is also one of our teachings. Every time I leave an elder's house, they'll say, come back and visit me. That's what they would say. There's a teaching in here that says, that means go out and visit each other. But it means more than that. It has the word for uhuatan. Somebody has been found. So when we visit each other, we find each other. We go to where they are, we find them, and then we learn about them. We learn about us through learning about them. We measure ourselves as we learn about them, and we learn what they need. We visit them, they visit us, And this wasn't, a couple hours. I remember people, they would come to my grandparents' house and they would stay for not just days, sometimes weeks. They would stop doing what they were doing and they would visit. That's what they would do. It's hard in this world to do that. But this is instrumental if we're going to survive as a people. If we're going to maintain our values, our community teachings, we have to visit one another. As they say, Unailanahi, Dejalasin Theesti. Unailanahi is that word for God, our provider. But when you say Unailanahi, Dejalasin Theesti, it means keep your footsteps firmly planted in God. What this means is follow the way that is right, which has been given to us. And if these teachings were given to us by God to follow in these footsteps, we have to keep these teachings alive. They also say this idea means when you see somebody, you're putting your best face forward. If you're living this way and you're showing somebody love and respect through these teachings, you're showing your best face. And when somebody looks at your best face, they put their best face forward. So when you're each facing each other with your best face, it grows, coming and going. It's like a feedback loop. And it doesn't just get a little stronger, it gets exponentially stronger. It encourages me to do better and encourages you to do better. And we're not just acting, we're doing. So it also means to have this reflection of the very best in each other. That's what they call that. It means face God, but it means look for the face of God in each other. Look for the very best in each other. So that's what these community teachings are about. Looking for the best in each other, treating each other right, visiting each other. One of the things Billy Smith Jagesa told me is that our ancestors didn't follow the golden rule. The golden rule was not universal. He said they followed what he likes to call the platinum rule. Platinum rule is harder. So the golden rule, as you know, is you treat others how you want to be treated. The platinum rule is you treat others how they want to be treated. That's a heck of a whole lot harder to treat somebody how they want to be treated. Somebody might not want to be treated the way I want to be treated. And if I just treat them how I want to be treated, then I'm not treating them right. So I have to go to them. I have to find them. I have to spend time with them. I have to follow these teachings and find them, get to know them, and understand them. Otherwise, I'll have no hope of being able to treat them the way that they want to be treated. So that kind of sums it up. You could sum it up with the golden rule, but I'm asking us as Cherokees, Anigaduwagi, Anitsalog people, to go a step further and follow this value. Find each other, learn from each other, look for the best in each other. Don't wear each other out. Don't let other people wear each other out. Liken yourself to each other, that which is sacred in every one of us. Learn from each other and make yourself a better person and treat each other right. And you know what? The more people that do this, the less people get taken advantage of. I've been taken advantage of sometimes for following these teachings. It's true. When somebody asks me for $5, if I've got it, I'll probably give it to them. I probably won't get anything back. But what I'll tell you is I don't give anything that I'm not willing to give. I've made that choice. It's called, if it's a sacrifice, if it's a choice, I'm not a victim of anybody's misbehavior. If I choose to be kind and generous and share what I have with people, if I choose that, then I will not be upset if they don't return that same in kind. That has to be my choice. So our ancestors were able to live this way because they were able to take care of themselves. They didn't live in poverty. They weren't dying of cancer, severe illness. They weren't dying of the things that our people today are suffering from. For too many years, our people have worried about survival. And if you're worried about the next meal, you don't have time to worry about cultural identity, language, or passing on philosophies and values. If you're worried about putting food on the table, you don't always have time to worry about how to treat people kindly. So we have to have a little bit of compassion for our own people that can't follow these things, because they've been through so much, they've suffered so much, that as a reflex, they might take advantage of these teachings. But still, that's what was given to us. That's what was provided to us. And maybe if more people were able to live those teachings, then we wouldn't suffer from the things that we suffer from today. We wouldn't suffer from the poverty. We wouldn't suffer from the illness, because we would be there to take care of each other. So I think that's our goal. And it's not just our goal, but our elders, Anigayan Uninoheda, that's what they said, that this belongs to the world. And maybe if the rest of the world started to do this, we wouldn't have to worry about paying so much in taxes, because we would take care of each other. We wouldn't have to worry about making so much money, because if something happened and we fell on hard times, we would be taken care of. The idea that we get through it as individuals is not a good way to live. It's not the way we were provided, and it's not what I suggest for our people to follow. So if you get an opportunity, if you haven't done so, find a PDF of these community values, email me, email Cherokee Nation, ask for a PDF of these community values. Just about anybody can be able to provide it to you. I have a few minutes. Do we have any questions? All right, skiwi, we're going to come. Wadon.